I just think if we don't have a planning department actually reviewing this, then we are doing the review of it, and I need to have like a finalized copy of it. Like, if it wasn't finalized, it shouldn't have even gone to them. And it shouldn't be coming to us right now. It's totally incomplete.
Are we ready? Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. So it is 5:04. We're going to start with a workshop on the Moab downtown plan first, and then move to our formal meeting at 6 o'clock. So last time when we left the downtown plan, we kind of hoped that we would open up discussion for a number of editings, revisions, whatever it is that we feel like we need to do before we send this to City Council. So the first thing on my agenda is the bypass.
Yeah, my first thing with the bypass is like, was this an open committee, and are there notes discussing, the committee should have notes, and I'd like to see those, and they should be included in the plan for the bypass.
Okay, so I have discussed with Kaylin Jones, and we've talked about the idea that the only reason that there's even mention of the bypass in there is for future funding in case it might happen down the road later. So right now there are no plans for a bypass, and I've emailed Emily on this and she has not returned my email. But right now there are no plans for a bypass. And so I'm not even sure that it should be in the downtown plan.
I agree.
Yeah, why are we talking about it? It's so far away.
Yeah, I completely agree. I couldn't find any notes on any open public meetings discussing why the bypass should be adopted into the general plan.
Because there is no plan for a bypass.
No.
And on top of that, that is a UDOT decision, and UDOT makes their 10 and 20-year plans, not their 5-year plans. And so even if we revisit this in 5 years, I think that's when it may be able to come back up. So at this point, I would like to delete all mention of the bypass in the downtown plan.
Yeah.
Unless council decides they need to put something in there so that if the funding happens and if this happens down the road, that they are covered because it's in our general plan.
Yeah, I'd like the recommendation to council to maybe be that all mentions of the bypass are taken out, and if there does need to be something for a funding reason, when Joel explained that, that does make sense, but I think that it could be something saying that this is not determinative of the city's position on the bypass, where it's located, or what shape that will take. It's a commitment to revisit it at the time that it's ripe with UDOT. I think that's all we need, and I think that would suffice as far as funding goes.
Okay. I would like to see priority number 25 is the site lighting retrofit. I would like to move that up to number 5 because we're getting it done and it needs to be, it is important. And so I'd like to see that moved up to the top 5. And that is on page 46 of the 44 of the plan, if you're looking at the, at the printed plan.
Page 40, what?
44, 46, if you're looking at the PDF.
Okay, thank you.
This?
Yes. No. Is there a number? Maybe my pages are all mixed up. There's a priorities list somewhere.
It is on page 44, which is page 44 of the PDF that I have. Chapter 4, prioritized recommendations.
So priorities, yeah. So, I know that there are a lot of things on that list, but I think
I don't see page numbers at all on this.
you don't have any.
It's toward the end, and it looks generally like this. Can you guys put your mics closer?
Yeah.
So priorities list right now, the first 5 are transportation. I'm not quite sure why we couldn't bump that up to, I don't know, pick a number. Because we are acting on it, we're hoping to get it to council by March, 1st of April anyway. So I think it's more important than raise medians and.
So you're thinking bike is, you're saying that bike lanes is important and we should move it up?
No, I'm saying that the lighting plan.
Lighting plan, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The lighting plan, which is now currently number 25. the site lighting retrofit. And since number 2 is the bypass, we could stick it right up there in number 2.
I think that makes good sense. I'd also like to see overlay district creation moved up somewhere in the order of operations on the prioritized recommendations. I think that fits very well with the city's long-term planning goals and objectives and might end up happening outside of the downtown process anyway. So it'd be a nice way to get that in place a little quicker and to make sure that it's prioritized on a variety of levels, if it's in the downtown plan as well as being part of, I know, a city council and planning commission objective. Is that me buzzing?
I think it was mine.
Oh. And that's currently 15.
Okay, so number 15, overlay district is a priority.
I'd like to move that up somewhere. I think, bike lanes make good sense, but I would like to see, for instance, an overlay district be created, which I think is indicative of longer term, big picture planning for the downtown area in the city of Moab before, say, number 9, which is a parking garage. I think citing that without really thinking about what we want to go where in the long term might be a little premature.
So are we talking about 15 through, 19? As they have them? Facades, infill. Facade grant program, overlay district.
I'm talking about number 15, overlay district creation.
Okay. Which goes hand in hand with form-based code, developer due diligence, facade grant program. So put number 15 at the top of the list with all of those things following it.
I think if that makes sense,
14, 16, 17.
If the rest of the commissioners agree. That just seems something that...
Marianne, are you saying that all of the infill items need to be moved together?
Yeah, I am. I think that with our hotel changes, we're going to have a lot of pressure put on Main Street, and we need to decide right now the form-based code and the overlay zone and kind of our vision of Main Street before any development pressure gets put on it additionally from the hotel changes that might come of the city council.
And so what would you like to bump down?
My idea was just to gain people's ideas of what should be at the top. And once we find our top priorities, we kind of just arrange everything else under them.
Okay.
I agree.
So right now, the top priority is a raised median. So can we throw the lighting up there on number 1 since we know that's going to be?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's
let's
good to start
put that
small.
at number 1. And then
That certainly makes sense with the city leading on lighting retrofit.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I love the raised median idea, but the no left turns, I think, is an idea worth considering, worth talking about at least.
And that is something that the city has no control over. Yeah.
It's UDOT.
That's all UDOT.
Main
And
Street
that's
is.
state.
Yeah, and that was all of the discussion of that within the downtown plan, within comments, was that that's a UDOT issue. And I think they said they did some sort of feasibility analysis and it didn't make sense at the time. But I mean, it's certainly something that the city can still push for, whether or not it's something we have direct control over. For instance, the bypass, we don't, but that is in our list.
Right.
So,
Doesn't the city have control over left turns onto the highway, though? Wasn't that something they talked about?
I can't remember.
We don't have control over
The light and the left turn lanes?
lightings. Yeah, the stoplights. Is that right, Summer? On Main Street, we don't have control over the stoplights on Main Street.
Yeah.
One thing I think would be very cool and perhaps help out our local economy is doing a little farmer's market, open space, car-free area, like off of Main Street.
But it's not here.
I think it'd be part of our overlay, our infill plan.
Okay, so let's move 14 through 19 up into right after the lighting plan.
Like, and also it was in the study and it was in the question, so I'm wondering how it didn't get into the prioritized projects, because it was discussed and people even went out to the site to look at where you could put an outdoor market. So I would like to add it to a number of the prioritized projects as an outdoor market, because we no longer have a farmer's market.
And what do you see this outdoor market being?
Outdoor street market that's closed to vehicles and open a few nights a week for live music and vendors, local farmers, local artisans, people who want to have tables, much like a farmer's market.
But the farmer's market doesn't make it because no one is there to run it. Who's going to run it?
Farmers market is also being taken over by Youth Garden, and it's moving to that
Again.
To Youth Garden?
Like Castle Valley Farms has been doing sort of a pop-up market there at Youth Garden Project.
Yeah, I think that they're gonna take over the official farmer's market. The health department isn't doing it anymore.
Right.
Sounds great.
So it's moving back to
Youth garden.
Yeah, I think we should look at the feasibility of a city-sponsored market, because we have a lot of local people who are very talented and don't have an outlet for their hobbies and crafts and fresh food that they grow.
And you want this on top of the farmer's market that we already have?
I don't know, it's a city market, arts, crafts, everything.
Okay. And when you say sponsored by the city, that means there is no fee for booze? Because at the current farmer's market, at least the way it has been run, the vendors had to pay a small fee.
Yeah, which some of them really had a hard time affording. So just shooting from the hip, maybe we close off an area, so the city would be, so the city could close off an area certain nights of the week so that people could set up tables and vend from them.
Do you have an idea of where?
There was a proposed area on Center Street. Summer, didn't you go out with there were guys who like met for part of a development plan?
I remember coming to one of the meetings and they talked about between Main Street and First West on Center Street,
Yeah.
having like rollable landscape.
Yeah, what did you think
Planner
about that
things.
idea?
I thought it was a good idea.
I will say, I've said that before, I love the rollable landscape planners. They have them in Telluride and they look really cool, and it's such a utilitarian way to have some traffic control when you need it, but not when you don't, when it's in the way. I really like those. If there's a way we could implement that, it might not be on Main Street because it's a highway, but I think those are a really good idea. And then you also don't have some of the visibility issues that a permanent fixture in the middle of the road has when you have, you know, a full block of cars for an event or something like that, that you definitely do have now.
I would just like the city to support something that's for a small local economy. We are more and more pushing out our local artisans and our local people, and I just want something that's like, if you make kombucha, you can sell it, or if you do arts and crafts and, you know, can't afford to be in a gallery, you could do it. Just something to bring the community together and like a walkable place.
And I hate to be a devil's advocate, but I'm just trying to figure out why that isn't the farmer's market.
Where is the farmer's market going?
Back
Youth
to
Garden Project.
At the youth garden. Why can't it be on a street though, and like be a street market close to Main Street?
Because we've already got one in the youth garden. That's all.
I think what she's trying to say is, number one, that's not a very good location for what she's talking about. You're probably comparing it to maybe Grand Junction or something like that, right?
Yeah, the goal is to create people on the street, walkability and vibrancy without vehicles.
Okay.
They also talked in the meeting that I went to about taking pressure off the city park with music festivals and whatnot, not having the noise right in the middle of the neighborhood. I thought that was a good point.
Okay, and do you like this in the top 20, 15, 10 in our priority list? Knowing we've already got 6 or 7 already, not counting any of the bike lane stuff.
I'd want to see it in top 15.
Okay. Okay, any other suggestions?
Bike lanes should be in top 10, if not top 5. Probably top 5 because they've already been discussed as with the public.
But the infills are already 14 through 19, so what do you want first, bike lanes or infill?
Oh, I think bike lanes.
Okay.
I think I intended infill to basically go right after bike lanes.
Okay.
Talking about that before parking garage.
All right.
I like a lot of the things that the list prioritized when it comes to comprehensive facade guidelines, preparation. I think that'll be an exciting process, and I hope it doesn't just take the form of making things really homogenous, but we're not there yet. But I do think it would be nice to have, if grant funding is available for Main Street or for the downtown area in order to sort of either upgrade or restore a lot, like what's happening right now at the Spoke building, I think that's great. I think that really contributes to sort of the eclectic character we have. If we can not have everything look like little boxes in a row on Main Street. So it's nice that that's a priority of, grant funding for those kind of things.
But it was not a priority in the surveys,
Yeah, I agree.
so.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for the priority list? Because the facades are now in the top 20 anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other suggestions?
I don't think downtown branding or marketing need to be on the priority list.
Okay.
Granted, the form that would take could certainly vary, but it's pretty low on the list right now. But if there are things like what Marianne was discussing, I think those are certainly higher priorities than needing to brand or rebrand the Moab downtown area.
Or market it
Or
for
market
any
it.
reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone want to discuss the raised median that they have as priority number 1?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Rachel, if
Come
you're
on
gonna
up to
speak,
the-
you need to come up to the mic,
Yeah.
state your name, so it can be captured on the,
Okay,
recording.
so Moab downtown plan, the estimated length would be 930 feet down Main Street. The estimated cost is $1.1 million. Funding would come from UDOT.
Rachel Moody. I was on the downtown steering committee, and we talked about the raised median, which was a top priority based on slowing traffic on Main Street for those 2 blocks. Also stopping the jaywalking, because most people won't walk over a raised median. And then also creating it so that when you're turning left on Center Street,
Traveling south?
yes.
Okay.
You're no longer running into pedestrians. So taking away that left-hand turn on both sides, because it's kind of a death trap in those pedestrian areas. And since UDOT won't allow you to have the left-hand turn lane light specifically, we thought about having that be removing the left-hand turn completely would save the pedestrian issues. We talked
So that's where
about-
the median would go?
Yes.
Would be right, okay.
So it would be 100 north to 100 south right down through the center. So you don't have left-hand turns there at all. So that saves at least, because they can't give you a dedicated pedestrian crosswalk time for the pedestrians. Does that make sense? I know.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, but I have, a right-hand turn, unless there's some kind of a study done, isn't a right-hand turn actually more safety? There's more,
Dangerous.
they're all dangerous. In fact, the right-hand turn, when you go to make a right-hand turn, you can't see
Yeah.
what's coming.
Well, and that's why they recommended the bulb outs as well as for
Yeah.
pedestrians.
I agree, something should be done there.
Would the bulb outs be part of the raised median project? Were those discussed at the same time?
I would think that they would want to be at the same time. And
They're
I would
different items on
recommend-
the list.
Yeah, I think that they should be somewhat the same, because I think it's all pedestrian oriented and slowing
Yeah.
traffic in that portion.
It's a great idea.
And then if you have them raised median and make it high enough that they can't hop over it, they're gonna be forced to go down to the crosswalk. And then they talked about putting trees and vegetation in there, but my suggestion
Yeah.
was, how about metal art? Having Stoke come out and put metal art down the median. But I think when you have that barrier down your highway, you automatically slow the trucks.
Yeah, you do.
And so then it makes it so that it's.
So what does that force the pedestrian to do?
Forces them to go to the crosswalk, to either 100 South Center Street or.
Okay, so it's either 100 North or 100 South, right?
It's just those 2 blocks, I
Just
believe.
two blocks.
So you can't run from Miguel's across to the
Or from
t-shirt
Nick
shop.
Stiff's over to the P
Yeah.
Street, yeah. Which I did the other day.
I was gonna say, am I on camera?
You can't run for Becky's office across the street to get coffee.
No, from Miguel's to the parking lot.
I think that's,
Guys,
I think
yeah.
that's a big priority.
Are you guys familiar with the project that probably was funded by UDOT on 21st South and Sugar House in Salt Lake City? It was this huge fish sculpture, and the median is the fish sculpture.
Yeah.
And because it's a really busy street, but they have like 4 or 5 lanes of traffic. So they put the sculpture down the middle and you can't cross it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That was the next question, if that helps you understand why we wanted that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I know UDOT obviously are the ones, and did they express the feasibility of that actually happening?
I believe in the
Unlike a lot of other
conversations
UDOT
that they had
things.
been communicating with UDOT
Yeah.
regarding that, the gentlemen that were in charge of the plan.
So what do we do with that? With this information, the great ideas? How do we approach that?
I'm guessing that if Summer's available, she and I will sit down and make sure these get in the right places, take the bypass out, and then we have a public hearing and then send it to council.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, the idea of art is great, and anything that can not require water
Exactly.
or having to be maintained, exactly.
Yeah,
And we have
yeah.
a wealth of local artists and artists who, are from adjacent communities who have sculptures here temporarily for the art trails exhibits, that maybe that could be a spot for a permanent installation on whatever gets voted on this year or next year. I think it's great.
I would prioritize that right under the overlay district.
Okay, so right now, just to be sure, I've got lighting number 1, I've got the bike lanes next, and then the infills, and then the outdoor market, and then the raised medians. And
Why are we moving raised median down?
I'm just trying to figure out the order,
No,
that's
I know,
all.
I was just asking others. I don't see a problem with raised median being, continuing to be first or second near the top of the list.
Okay,
Because I think we should have a few very concrete things that are on there, less, for example, the overlay district, back in parking, raised median is very sort of shovel-ready, for lack of a better way to put that.
Let's specify when we do the raised median in the final, plan that we're proposing, that we're also using the funding for a local artist, an artist who lives in Moab, to create that.
so, site lighting retrofit, raised medians and curb bulb outs, infill. Oh no, bikes and then infill.
Sure. I mean, it's all just priorities, but
Yeah, but we might as well send what we want. So bikes and then infill and then outdoor market.
On First West and Center, right?
that was the discussion
The
that.
market
Becky brought up.
location, yeah.
Madam
Just
Chair.
stay up here.
So I've been managing Center Street Square for 16 years, and we would love to participate in street festivals. We've been eager to have lighting up East Center Street. We put in 3 restaurants over the past 16 years that have become very successful. I think it's a great location to draw people down. West Center Street, you know, you've got the Rio, you've got parking lots, it's so Moab, but up East Center Street, we have over 30 businesses at Center Street Square. We'd love to see participation of any sort of festival be brought that direction if it's at all possible.
Yeah.
Also with the recommendation that they had for curb bulb outs, they didn't include East Center Street. So right at 100 or Center Street and 100 East, that's also a very heavily pedestrian trafficked area with the courthouse, the sheriff's department, Center Street Square. Also being able to support those restaurants and possibly widening some of the sidewalks so we could have a few tables outside or table tents. We can't put, sign tents. We're not able to put any of that up at East Center Street, which would be nice to, if we're gonna be doing it for Main Street and West Center Street, I would like to make sure that East Center Street isn't forgotten.
Thank you. And parking-wise, the visibility is really bad on Center Street if you're trying to turn on to East Center Street, trying to come out of, say, the post office bank area and go either direction because of the angle that cars are out on both sides. You can't see a car until half of your car is into the road, and that, with a street that wide, is just, I think that could be a way if you're widening sidewalks to make the parking situation a little bit better, and certainly visibility for pedestrians and cars that are turning on off.
At the same time, you could add lighting, like you have all the street posts that go down Main Street and West Center Street, and we don't have any up East Center Street. And there are other retail shops up there that have come and go. I've put in maybe 100 businesses. Maybe I'm exaggerating, I'm not sure, but so many that just haven't been able to be successful up East Center Street because it's hard to get people up Main. And they could be more successful with lighting and just creating a vibe.
What about if you shut down traffic for a few hours a night? Has anybody talked about that?
I don't know if we could liquidate that much parking for that long, but I would say, you know, if you did a monthly festival or something like that, like they do in Durango and farmers markets in other cities, that would probably be something that would be nice. Just like what they did over by the Mark, you know, you could also do that down 100 East.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, I didn't think we'd have time, but can we go ahead and move on to the county and city lighting plans? And I know that you guys have probably not had a lot of time to talk about this. Summer, do you have any direction
Thanks, Rachel.
for us before we move on?
I just pulled what you gave me.
Okay.
And that included the previous draft that we looked at, as well as the draft that Jeff had put together, just for comparison's sake. That's, other than that, that is up to you guys.
So I assume that we can either start with the lighting plan or call a 27-minute recess and,
No, I'd say we go forward.
okay.
But I would like to, let me just say something. What we're talking about is big congestion on our street, right? On Main Street, particularly First North to First South, the Center Street, from First East to First West, right? We do have a problem there, and I would like to prioritize something. I'm thinking about the post office and those kind of. Is there a chance the post office, which is owned by the state or the federal government?
Federal government, yeah.
I think we should somehow petition that post office to eventually be gone, to go someplace else. Because that is and I don't know, how we could do that, but that is something that does not require a location that's good. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I know that people have to go to the post office, but eventually we have to start making some changes. I see our ballpark sitting here. I'll bet someday that's going to be something else.
We hope
I
not.
totally disagree. Our job is to preserve the community and things that the community uses, like grocery stores, post offices, ballparks, the gym.
Well, ballparks we can move, some things have to change. I mean,
The ballpark is never going to move. This is always going to be our community ballpark. It's zoned for that, and it's never going to change.
But I just think there might be a better use somehow
I think
for
the
what's-
post office, I will say, I walk to the post office almost every day from my office for work, and I don't know, I think it's nice to not have to get in my car in the middle of the day every day and drive, because I work downtown, to have the post office sited there. But no, you know, if there are things that you can preserve the walkability and bikeability of the current city center, I think Marianne's point on that is well taken. But you know, I don't know how much, if it's not city property, there's very little we can do other than long-term land use plans. You know, if X stops being the use there, then this is our hope that it would be in the future.
And I don't think we do have any control.
Well, we don't,
It's-
but I just think that things are gonna start getting, they're gonna have to upsize. I mean, you know, we're just growing so much.
But I hope we can stem that. I hope we and the land use priorities that we have can help stem that.
Yeah, Brian, I totally understand your point that we are going to grow and the post office might have to expand someday. And yeah, as planners, we definitely should be setting aside that land that we are going to need.
Yeah.
It does seem dangerous over there to me, though. It's
Well, that's my
very
point.
clustered
I mean,
and
look at
chaotic.
the traffic. Look at the traffic it's creating.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. There's not even enough parking for the people going to the post office. She walks, but most people drive.
I walk.
If you go there, something's gonna change. I'm just saying that that's part of the congestion that we're having. If we're really trying to address the congestion, that's part of it.
I mean, maybe there ends up being, there's plenty of true city post offices that don't have parking, or they have, you know, 2 5-minute walk-in spots, if that's something, but we have very little control over that, particularly because it's a federal
I think
location.
it's a cool amenity of our small western town, and in a lot of small western towns, the post office is
But you can't
really
have
well
both.
preserved.
You can't have both. You can't have pedestrian and such great congestion in one area. You've got to decide if you want safety and parking. And right now, so I'm just throwing that out there, that sometimes we want both, but we're not going to get both.
And so maybe what we need to do is when we consider the parking plan, which should also be across our desk, I hope, this year, is consider requiring more parking for any other businesses that come into Moab, so that there is available parking and it's safer or whatever it is. But I think that's where our action can come, is from the parking plan.
Does the back end diagonal parking apply to in front of Moonflower on the downtown plan? Do you guys know?
I think
That
it was
might be a huge help.
It was a recommendation.
Because that's the biggest danger I see driving. Like, even if you're going the speed limit, someone backs out faster than you can even stop, and then you're
It's
swerving
crazy.
over. And
It's a crazy place.
Should we add that to our list? Back in parking in certain locations?
It's on there.
It's on there
so that'll be a good change.
Move it up as a priority on the list?
I think you'll probably see some on 100 West, 100 South, around 100 West with the redo of that street.
Because
So I
that's a
think you'll-
dangerous spot too, right by Zach's, yeah.
You'll see a small area there, the first area of back-in parking, and get people used to that concept. They tried to put in some back-in parking next to I believe it was next to the Catholic Church over on 4th North. There's some education that needed to happen with that, but it's a lot safer, and it's safer for pedestrians, safer for bicycles. So you'll see that probably here in the next couple of weeks over on 100 South.
Yeah.
In front of Zach's.
It's good to know, because I was gonna say that, I think that spot's worse than Moonflower, as it is, because people are right turning there, and you can't see, and someone's backing out as someone's
Well,
turning.
they're
It's way worse.
the same. It's all the same. There's so much.
Jeanette, do you have anything for the downtown plan that we kind of have been working on the priority list and taking the bypass out?
I agree with the bypass, taking that out at this point. I think we don't have very much control over that. I think it's a DOT decision. As far as parking, that should have been something that we should have been working on. I mean, we've been working on this on and off for the past 15 years.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's totally something that is definitely a priority at this point.
Probably.
So, yeah, I think it's definitely a priority.
Okay.
Parking is definitely a priority at this point.
And that is one of the things that I hope to get across our desk and off our desks soon.
Okay.
If we have a planning
It's just
department
cleaning
to help
house.
us.
Allison's job.
I hate a messy desk. Okay, anything else on the downtown plan?
I don't think so.
Okay, so what I'd like to do with this is if Summer and I can get together and clean it up and plan a public
Set
hearing.
it for public hearing?
Okay.
I love the post office.
Oh, I know.
Okay,
But it's so good.
lighting
I
plan.
do too.
Joette, you
I've
want to
been
come
here
up and talk to
forever.
us about the lighting plan? Sure. So right now in front of us, we have the draft of the city plan and the draft of the county plan. We're hoping to make the city plan look like the county plan.
That was the intent.
Okay.
Can I ask a really weird question about the lighting ordinance?
Sure.
And I've been looking at this for months, okay? This is not something that I think we should table, but I do have a question. Why was there so much, Summer, why was there so much pushback from the city not to adopt this plan? There seemed to be.
Pushback from the city?
Mm-hmm. Because I've been working on and off with Garish and other people, and there was some pushback from the city. There were some problems, and I'm not really sure why we didn't want to work with the county. Do you know anything
Well,
about that?
first of all, we're understaffed in the planning
Right,
department.
but this is like months ago. This is like months and months ago.
We were understaffed in the planning department and working on workforce housing, working on the pad. We had direction from council on other agenda items.
Okay.
So I don't feel that there was pushback from the city. It's just that it was not
It wasn't a priority.
prioritized
Yeah,
at that
that's
point.
fine. Yeah, maybe I used the wrong words. There was people, I think it was just everybody was so busy with other stuff that it's never gone any farther than the talking stages or the
Right.
Or
And
the
that was my
paperwork.
understanding.
Okay, that's
It
fine.
went to, the county, we were surprised that the county jumped on it so fast.
Oh,
So we
okay,
initially
that's what-
started working with the city,
Mhm.
and then understanding what was going on with the city, Zachariah approached the county, and the county planning commission was like, yeah, we want to make this a priority, and
I
so.
don't think there's any pushback from the city as far as the plan is concerned. I don't want that to be the impression.
Yeah.
It's just that, with the changes that have gone on in the department, some things kind of took a back burner, but I don't think that council, I think that this is definitely a priority for the planning commission as well as the city council. So I hope that
Yeah, no,
was not the impression that was given.
We don't have
Maybe
a
I'm using the
Zachariah.
wrong, maybe I'm using too strong
You don't
of a
have
word,
anybody.
but there-
We don't have anybody.
I mean,
We
it
have
was
Summer.
just like, it was just
Temporary.
like something else that was
Yeah.
in the
And
fire.
I think we're
that-
back on track.
Okay,
And I
that's
think the
all I wanna
county
know.
is just gonna be able to get it moved faster, but, as long as you guys have the time to.
And the county was at a point where they were ready to hold open houses where
Right.
the planning commission had only reviewed the document once and really hadn't
Right.
had
So they
much time to discuss or provide any sort of feedback. And so when the county was ready to hold an open house, we were not in that position, so.
And that's why I decided it might be easiest for us just to compare ours with the county plan and go from there.
And we want to have another open house, we did that last week and it was very good, but we want to do that again. We feel it's really important, once these ordinances are out there, that the community and the public feels very comfortable with what it means and how they can be a part of the process.
Okay. And I thought the open house was great. I wish there were 100 people there. but
I do
there
too.
weren't,
That's why
so-
we feel like
Yeah.
we kind of rushed that a little bit, but we would like to do another one, and
Okay.
perhaps when you all and the city council are prepared to do a public hearing, we can set up our posters out in the hallways, so as
Okay.
people come, they can read them.
That'd be great.
I would hope that would be the
Very
case.
informative
Yeah.
and educational.
And I'd like to see the commercial district there. I'd like to see them invited and have them
Right.
show up to see how those changes are going to affect their businesses.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so any comments straight away off the city or county plan if you've had time to review?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's really exciting. I know, God, it feels like it was months ago. It was like half a year now that Crystal talked to us about the Dark Skies plan. But I do think that for a community this size, the nature of our businesses and what they are now, again, this is something that can always be amended for good cause. I think we should err on the more conservative side when it comes to lighting hours. Because right now, in both the city and the county draft, commercial establishments will turn off outdoor lighting except listed below by 12 o'clock midnight. That just seems unnecessarily late when there's already a carve-out made for businesses that are open past whatever the closing time is. So that would still apply to restaurants, bars, grocery stores, anywhere that still was open. And it still allows lighting to illuminate entrances to those establishments, things for safety. But you really do see a lot. I mean, no one wants to look out at town and see light. You know, obviously we have different standards under this plan, so hopefully overall it's going to be better. But you know, if we can have downward facing great design lights everywhere, and then for those to just be straight up off when they aren't needing to be in use, I think that would make town just pretty spectacular as far as dark skies go and light pollution.
I camped out on the river at Onion Creek like 3 weeks ago. We just did a rafting trip for my birthday, and we went to bed super early. But the light pollution was out. Like before we went to bed, there was just this huge glowing cloud coming from Moab.
Yeah, there always is.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're pretty far away from town to see that.
And I think it makes sense because, you know, obviously right now we have, you know, one or two businesses that are kind of above sight lines of the rest of town, but that certainly, you know, as we're growing, it's feasible that we're going to have more places that are up high, that where it's something like that, even if the lights are facing down, yes, they're facing down, but they're still facing down into the valley below. I think that would get ahead of that a little bit. I mean, I would certainly, I look forward to feedback from business owners about that when we have a public hearing on it. But for me, that just seems everywhere. I mean, our busiest restaurants that serve alcohol are only open until 9 o'clock right now, and that's even during the busy season. And bars are only open until 1, and they would still fall under the exceptions here. So, you know, if City Market had its lights out when it closed, that would be
Good.
pretty huge.
Or the Sunset Grill.
Or
Or,
I was trying not to name other names.
or the school district.
Or the school
Yeah,
district.
absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I think the government is just as,
Yes,
We're gonna save
definitely.
a lot of money
Responsible.
on electricity over the years by turning
But
off the lights.
okay,
We're supposed to shut those off, and they have not.
they don't. How much input are we going to get from the businesses? I mean, are we seeking input?
I mean, they're welcome to. I hope,
Yeah.
Open at the-
yeah, like I
guess
just
it's
said, I
open
hope
house.
they do give feedback if there's some reason why that 12 o'clock is prudent.
But how are we getting a hold of them?
They
Our
are,
group-
like
our-
the rest of the public, on notice that this is happening, and
But are they getting noticed by just the paper?
No, we have reached out to some business owners to get their feedback, the Moab Dark Skies group that I'm working with. And so we wanted them to be inclusive and part of the process from the beginning so that they could also get excited about this and set the example for other businesses. So that's kind of been an intent. We haven't had a lot of participation from them, but we have reached out to them. Amy Weiser, who used to be a city employee, who now works with Mike Bynum, who's, you know, very big in developing the community right now. We've been in contact with her and with Mike, you know, to try to have him take a lead in, you know, getting the other business owners excited about it. So we've been kind of strategic about how we've been meeting with other folks.
Yeah.
That
great.
we know may have some concerns on how this is going to impact their business. So we've been very proactive that way.
I mean, otherwise, we're going to have a really big surprise.
I know, and
There's
that's what we've
most
been.
of the, huh? If
we-
you want to avoid that.
Yeah, I was a part of it 15 years ago, and so we were very cognizant that that could happen. And so
Right.
we're hopeful that it won't. And that's why we're doing all this outreach, education-wise, open house-wise, you know, just kind of getting out there in the public so people know that this is happening and that we won't get those surprises. We will. I mean,
We
you know,
will.
this is Moab. There's going to be people that are going to be concerned about it, but I think
I mean, it's a great idea.
hopefully we can alleviate those
I agree. The
And just like
walls-
private citizens, the businesses have the responsibility to understand what's
to pay,
happening
to
with
pay,
the.
but to pay attention. But
Right.
the problem sometimes is reaching out and actually finding them.
Right, and I think
Because
the
if they're not
county's-
reading that little tiny article in the paper, and then all of a sudden they get hit with this,
and
Yeah,
that's
I
why
know,
I'm-
Brian.
then the feedback, the hit,
That's why I'm thankful
That-
Joe
a
is
big
here to
wave.
spread the word.
And I will reiterate that, and this is a concern I've had for a while, and I've talked about it a bit with others and with city council. There, you know, the city has the wherewithal and the resources, and certainly the drive to do a better job of notifying the public about not only what's happening, but how it could apply to them. I think that's where things
Yeah.
get lost in translation a lot.
you bet.
No one is understanding that, you know, the pad, for instance, will do X, Y, and Z, and here's how it could apply to you. And we have communication staff, we have people whose job that is, and I would really like that. You know, maybe this is the time when we do a good job of coordinating, because there's already an entity already set up who's doing a good job of notifying people, and we can learn from you about how the city can do that better, and not have to rely on a private entity to get the word out.
Right. Well, we don't mind.
I mean, it's a great idea.
But it's an ongoing,
Yeah,
we've
it's an
gotta do
ongoing
it.
process. In fact,
It
what
is.
we want to do once, hopefully, that these ordinances are approved and law, that we want to continue that outreach so that we can educate them about
Yeah.
what this means and what they can do. You know, I mean, my philosophy is Moab's changing. We all know it's changing, but the sky isn't.
yeah,
You know, and so if we can kind of get people to understand that this is something that you can control.
yeah.
You know, we may not be able to control the lack of parking, you know, all the
Yeah,
tourists that come.
totally.
We can control our own lights in our own house.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of incentive for a more timely response to the ordinance once it's in place? Like,
Oh,
for
5
instance,
years.
no, I know the time period, but for example, you know, maybe having some sort of market-driven incentive for early implementation, where maybe there's grant funding available or funding from the city to help with retrofitting, if you are
My organization.
one of the first 10 businesses to get it underway. I mean, something like that could really go a long way to getting things rolling. Otherwise, 5 years is a long time.
Yeah, no, we plan on doing like a what do you call it? An award for businesses that
That's great.
want to
Yeah.
want to show the example and be the first. So we plan on having that ongoing.
Good.
My organization, which is the nonprofit partner with the Park Service, has funding available for residents that may want to change out their lighting or change their fixtures and can't afford it, so
Awesome.
we would provide a stipend for that. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be starting to do once the ordinance is in place and we know the direction that the city and the county want to go with
Yeah.
it. And then we can build from there. We'll have brochures, you know, we'll do open houses,
Cool.
we have a plate of things that we can do to just keep this out there.
Good.
Great. And the school district.
Yeah, you know, we did a presentation at the school district, and so, you know, once we have the law, then, you know, we can work more strategically with them. But we're trying to be very, you know, positive about it.
Sure.
You know, and it's not like Sunset Grill, your lighting is bad. It's like, you know, there's some more appropriate ways that you could light that are just as effective.
Good.
Well, I turn my classroom light off every day when I leave, but I'm not sure if that's making much of a difference.
I brought you guys stickers, because the last time I was here,
Yes.
somebody said, we want stickers. So
Yes,
Dude,
always.
stickers are the
I
best.
also brought some Milky Ways, if you
Thank
guys
you.
want a little Milky Way.
A Milky Way?
No,
I
I've already
wouldn't
got
turn
one.
that down.
I've already got one on my car
Thank you.
and on one of my water bottles.
This
so I'll
is an
just keep
awesome
spreading them
sticker.
around.
Going on my water bottle.
Oh, look, it's got little downward shielded lights on it. Tiny little corner. I love it.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I was like, where?
Yeah, over the
Always need chocolate.
cityscape. Oh my gosh, are those the caramel ones? I'll take one of those.
Yeah.
Y'all, I didn't eat a proper meal today. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, just one. That's all I need.
Thank you.
One of those for dinner? No, just one, thanks.
I'll take a
We're
new
not
one.
city council. We're not going to be here until.
Yes, I'll take that new one. Right there. Thank you so much.
I don't know how much detail you're gonna go into this tonight, but,
This is it. This is
7
really
minutes
about it.
more of detail.
so are you gonna, have a public hearing coming up, or how?
I hope so. We need to get the downtown plan out of the way first. If we can get moving on this, maybe have the public hearing at the end of April or the beginning of May.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
Fine,
Yeah.
just so that we know.
because it's March
what
already.
our
That's what I'm hoping.
timeline.
Because I think if we can get the workshop done next meeting, that's into March, public hearing, so maybe end of April.
Because we want to be here to support you guys
Okay.
in the whole process.
Okay.
So I just
I will make a note to let you know
Good.
as soon as I know.
that sounds great.
Thank you for the
At where? Oh,
information and the treats.
okay.
So now that everybody's mouth's full, can we take a quick break and we'll reconvene at 6 o'clock. It is now 5:55. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So don't crunch really closely. Mouth sounds, just what everyone wants to hear.
Thank you, Joette and Rachel.
Thank you. I'm like Apple lady right now, but my screen's really tried to cross-reference.
Oh, be careful.
Hey, Allison,
The leany chair.
I want to know what we're going over next. So I have it. Do I have it here?
First thing on the agenda is the Slick Rock Hotel.
Oh, so we're going over the Stick Rock Motel?
So it's the first thing after the lighting plans and the city plan, if you've got anything in order.
God, I've just got so much stuff here, I don't even know. Yeah, please help me
Fiddle
out.
around.
Yes. I missed the
So
last
this is, no, that's not it.
2 meetings, basically.
This is all city plan, lighting plan. So that's city plan.
So you've got, and this is the motel, or this is the Stick Rock.
So that's the first thing on the agenda, and then these guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
great,
And
thank
the
you.
Slick Rock came over our desk last meeting,
Right,
and it was tabled, so.
okay.
there's-
And that's the new motel going south of, north of town.
Right, north of town, south of the
Gotcha.
Holiday Inn, yeah. And I think Summer's got some.
And what are we trying to do? We're trying to approve what?
Approve
Site
the-
plan approval, yeah. Here's everything that it should have for a site plan.
Do I have that?
So Jeanette, how are things?
Good.
There's things that say underneath.
Like,
80% of the parking
be nice to her.
And Erica's ready to do dessert.
Oh, she's so done. She's so done. We're going to Boulder
Okay,
tomorrow.
okay.
See, since we don't have any Fort Collins on Saturday, hoping I can beat the snow.
Yeah, because there's something big coming down.
But do we have to do it quickly?
Where's it coming to? What packet I gave you?
It's not coming down again. It's
Where though?
Salt Lake.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but that doesn't mean, but you know what?
Okay. Because I gotta fly Sunday from Junction to Denver to DC. That should be okay though. Maybe. I know, it was the only one I could get. I tried to go through Dallas.
Is he here today, I guess? Oh, isn't he? Okay, so I want to make sure I have all the paperwork for that.
So I'll just go through the requirements, and if you can look at like site plans and stuff, because
Look, it works.
Well, I'm just now getting it out today.
Next to my moonflower
That's the reason
sticker.
why I'm saying. We shouldn't be rushed into making a decision, just because he's looking for approval, it's just. Is it up?
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, It's you. The public comment forms are out in the hall when we get to that point. They're just white. I took the blue ones away, so there's no confusion. Ours are just white. They're out there, so if they wish to speak, they can fill those out, and there are pens out there.
We can go on indefinitely break with them.
Yes. What were you doing?
Nail. And I did it
I don't have
early,
enough, I don't have
right
enough
after
information
that,
to know that.
I made a trip to Mexico.
There's not enough information in it.
It's gonna be fun.
I mean, what goes over someone's desk would be the drainage, and those type, which they've probably already done, because that's probably a result.
Yes.
Yeah.
A majority of the
So
stuff
those
that
kind of things that we don't have to worry about.
I remember,
What's in drawing?
Are you a teacher at the high school? Nice. What do you teach?
That's what we have to read.
Nice.
That's what we're worried about.
It's my
So,
favorite subject.
You know, you guys don't have the full set of drawings, there's just too many to remember. You know, engineering, public works, planning, we've all did that.
there were still too many things
I do actually have the calculations for you as far as the open space. And we'll find geometry. I will put that in my slide just so you have information.
But it's logic, so that would make a lot of sense with
But
the eventual
because of the
trajectory.
drawings, I don't put everything in there because that's.
Everyone was crying over Bruce, and I was like, oh, this is
I'll show you guys how to keep it. Are you ready?
no. Oh, yay, our screen. Ours is so good.
Okay. I call to order the February 28th, 2019 meeting of the Moab Planning Commission at 6 p.m. First item on the agenda is citizens to be heard. This is for items not on the agenda. If you would like to speak, please fill out a public comment sheet that can be found in the hall. Anybody here for citizens to be heard? Okay, we'll move on to action item number 4, which is Planning Resolution 05-2019, a resolution conditionally approving the commercial site plan for the Slick Rock Hotel on property located at 1431 North Main Street in the RC Resort Commercial Zone. Summer?
Hang on. Just doing some minor calculations. We are going to get there. We need a plug. Sorry, everybody.
So how's everyone's day been?
Come on. Here we go. Hang on, I have to tell it, yes, I need to use this program.
For those of you listening or watching at home, we're just getting some technological things figured out.
Thank you. We are connecting. Ready to share. There we go. There we go. Here we go. Okay, this is the Slick Rock Hotel. You had your initial viewing of this at the last Planning Commission meeting. It was tabled. There have been some updates. We'll go over just the application itself. It is at 1431 North Main Street. It is in the resort commercial zone. It is 3.2 acres, 121 rooms, and 125 parking spaces. This is an overall site layout. There were some questions that had come up prior to the meeting about their open space, and I was able to go up to my office and find the one that has calculations. It was not included in your packet. We do have a lot area of 139,392 square feet. We have landscaping and site amenities, and it does give us a total of 25.03% open space. There were also some questions as far as the parking, and although it appears that the parking is in front of the building, it is located to the side of the property. The frontage is along Highway 191, so that is their front, even though their doors open to the north. So there's that. And here are some elevations of the building. This talked about the conditional approval. I know there was some confusion about that last week or last meeting. They are conditions of approval. It is not a conditional use. The application does meet the elements of the code. There were some minor engineering and public works things that needed to be addressed. The developer has submitted some additional information. In speaking with our engineering department, I believe that we have resolved the engineering issues. There were a couple of changes that were submitted for the public works department. They have indicated that they are okay with those changes, and they have submitted an updating lighting sheet to meet the full cutoff, fully shielded requirements of the code. The sign permit is actually administratively approved by staff, and the developer does plan to submit their proposal to satisfy the Assured Workforce Housing Ordinance requirements. And
So the motion should still include 4 and 5 on that list?
You could include all of them at this point. It won't hurt.
Okay.
Yeah. Even though they've been satisfied
Okay.
for the most part.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, can we just pull up a picture? Will that work?
Pull up a picture?
Yeah.
What kind of picture?
Can you pull up the images that you submitted
Yeah.
with the...
So I have a question while you're doing that. Is the utilities all going out the west side, a sewer system that's not quite there, or, and I'm sure you've addressed that.
The north area trunk sewer line is supposed to be going through it actually
bottom of
goes
the wetland.
down the Wyndham property. The sewer has been looked at by the sewer department as well as engineering, and that
Sure,
has been
I'm
resolved.
sure of that. I guess so. And the highway, the new highway that's going in, is that going to be a light right there, or is that just a?
UDOT has not indicated that they would put a
anything like
light
that?
there.
So is that not?
But there
a
are
concern?
widenings, so they'll have the turn lanes to turn left into the development.
Okay.
And you want a picture of what was in the packet? Is that what you're asking for, Marianne?
Yeah, so let's
Okay.
just look at the elevation images as a group. Let's look over the blueprint as a group.
You can do that. Is there a basement in this?
The applicants are here if you have questions for the
Could you guys come on
applicants.
up to the table and introduce yourselves again, and if you have any answers to our questions, you can be here ready for us.
Kirk Barker. Yes, there's a partial basement. It's not the entire footprint of the building, but there is a partial basement.
It's pretty.
So
Are you looking for the plat, Marianne, or?
Yeah, let's go over all the drawings really quickly.
So here are the building elevations.
Not that quickly.
Sorry, it's a touch screen and I can't always control the speed.
Okay, I'm in slight disbelief that the front of the building is on Highway 191 because the drive up is to the north of the building. And this drawing shows rooms on the east side of the building. So why does the entrance of the hotel not open to the concierge desk and doesn't include the drive up, which is it's a slightly unbelievable east side of the building.
The entrance of the building is on the north side.
Okay.
And part of the reason for that is that UDOT is limiting the number of the number of driveway accesses that can go into or off of Highway 191. And they were in a position where they were required to share an access with the development next door. So they don't have their own curb cut off of Main Street.
Okay,
Yeah, if you look at the aerial site plan layout, you can see the sort of in, a lighter grayscale where the driveway comes in, and then across the way, there's another development.
Yeah, the entrance opens up to where the vehicles are pulling into the property, and it'll be much more of a natural flow into the hotel.
Okay. 173140 says that locate most, at least 80% of required parking on the side or rear of each structure. So we just decided that the north side is the front of the structure, and most of the parking should be either on the side or the rear of the structure, not in the front.
The north is actually not the front. Their frontage is on Highway 191. That has to be considered their front because that is their actual main street frontage.
So those 20 spots are still below the threshold?
Correct.
So their address will be on 191 and not whatever it is this
Correct.
access road is.
Correct. Do you want to move to this elevation?
Oh yeah, you can see the basement.
Okay, for level 2, 100 foot, is that 100 feet long in length? Is this drawing 100 feet long? Is this section of the building 100 feet?
I don't know that I have.
We have to have 4 interesting features on every 100 foot of length of hotel.
I believe it's pretty close, and as you can see, there are actual relays in the building on this to where some of it pops out and some of it's recessed back.
Any balconies?
No, there's a balcony. Well, there's a nice patio on the rear of the building. We didn't want to put balconies that were out on the highway. There's a blend of elements as well in the building. We've got rock at the base. We've got some stucco. The red color is actually a corrugated steel that's patina, so it's rusted. We'll kind of have a fun look to it. And then there's wood on the building as well, wood beams.
Cool. Can we look at the east and the west, please? East elevation. So east elevation facing Main Street. Yeah. So we're looking at east elevation facing Main Street. So this is your frontage. What does that door open up to?
No, it might be better if you just go to the footprint where you have the aerial view of the site.
I think it's a few pages before.
Yeah.
It's a different.
174. Okay.
So that's the rear of the building that you're looking at in that image there. Yeah. So I think this gives us a better view of the building in relation to the highway. Are you comfortable where the highway is here on this map?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that, I guess we will call it the front elevation that faces the highway. There are the rooms there. And then it's really kind of north and west is what opens up to the property access. And that access is shared between us and the WorldMark project.
Okay. That's a really interesting workaround for a front of a building that's supposed to be on 191. I'd say if that wanted to be argued, it could be argued.
When we originally proposed this to the city, we actually had the porte cochere open up onto the highway. And at that point in time, the city actually asked us to go back and reorient, reconfigure the building, and shift the porte cochere to its present location, which is what we did.
Because of the shared access requirements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks good, I think.
Mm-hmm. And because of RC requirements in the code. So that's why it was done like that.
Anyone else read the requirements? Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, I call for a motion.
I motion to conditionally approve based on the conditions that still have not been met, including, we're just keeping them all there. Planning Resolution 05-2019, a resolution conditionally approving the commercial site plan for the Slick Rock Hotel on property located at 1431 North Main Street in the RC Resort Commercial Zone.
Do I have a second?
And I will second it.
Yep.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
1 opposed. So motion carries. Okay, action item number 5, the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2019-07, an ordinance amending the City of Moab Municipal Code C1 Commercial Residential Zone, Section 17.20.020, use regulations with the addition of eating establishments, including drive-in and drive-through services, and Moab Municipal Code Section 17.20.040E to read no building or structure shall exceed 30 feet in height. I open the public hearing at,
Do you want a presentation real quick?
sorry,
Yeah, let's
yes.
present.
It's really, really, really super simple.
Tell us what's going on.
It is a whopping 3 slides. Are y'all ready?
Yes.
Okay, oh, hang on, I should play.
With sound effects.
Why are you giving me sound effects? Let's not do that.
Style over
That's a
substance.
no. Okay, this application is for some text amendments to the C1 zone. As you mentioned, they would like to add eating establishments, excluding drive-in and drive-through services, and change in the building height from 18 to 30 feet. Clearly I can't type because I've got a typo in there. And just for reference sake, this is the C1 zone. This is the only location of the C1 that we have in the city. It is adjacent to Highway 191. So just keep that in mind when you're evaluating this, that it does have highway frontage, but it does also back a residential neighborhood. So I don't know a lot of the history of the zone, but the applicants have provided a lot of information in their narrative that I hope you all have had a chance to read. It is the purple, yes.
It's the purple.
I have my physical zoning map, if anybody actually wants to pull it out and look at it.
We have
Okay.
this as well that I can pass around. Sorry.
We should have another copy of the zone.
We should probably put one in here. I'll just leave this up for now, but this is the end of my presentation.
Okay.
That was 2 slides, Summer. We were promised 3.
Hey, there was the title slide, and that one came complete with sound effects.
All right. So this is the purple, because this map doesn't have street names on it. If people are interested, which is fine. I just wanted to make sure that this was clear to the public who are watching or listening or in the audience that we're talking about. It's the Juan neighborhood kind of behind it, but that street that you see that almost parallels for the whole north portion is Hobbs Street. There's a little cul-de-sac, Sunshine Circle, that comes in, and then that loops down, which I think is Mi Vida, that goes all the way down that way.
I think
Yes.
I think so.
But it's not, what
Next
part
time-
of that isn't paved? It's Emma that isn't paved,
Emma is
right?
not paved.
Okay.
And that is the portion that's back behind the church buildings.
Yep.
That's there.
And so the buildings that are currently in this zone would be the bank,
The bank, the
where the
real
peach
estate
lady is.
and dental office, and what used to be way back when, the old Chamber of Commerce
Yeah,
office.
which is where the peach lady is now.
That's where the peach lady is.
Yeah.
The rest of them are undeveloped properties.
Okay.
So now if you
Can
want
I,
to open
The applicants are here if you have
I
questions
was
for
gonna
them
say,
as well.
historically, you guys have come to us before, correct, Amundo? Not for this.
No, for this.
Okay.
There was an application for a different
item.
But I've seen you
Yes.
before.
Yes.
That's basically it. I was like, this is not the same thing. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
I would like to open the public hearing at 6:18 PM. Is there anybody out there who would like to speak on proposed ordinance 2019-07?
We did get one letter.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm happy to
Yes.
summarize the contents of that.
That would be great.
We had one letter from a citizen that we received in advance of the public hearing tonight. The gist of which being that the C1 is the transition zone between commercial and residential, and that in order to have that be a transition zone rather than just a flat commercial zone, that the 30 feet in height probably isn't prudent. Given that even though 30 feet in height is currently allowed in the R zones, most are still two-story structure, and the character of that being smaller structures, this being the transition zone, it seems inappropriate to put it up to 30 feet. And please, anyone else chime in if I did not summarize that intelligently.
I think it was summarized well.
I think it was done well. Thank you.
So I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:20 PM. We're moving on to action item number 6, Planning Resolution 06-2019. Resolution recommending to City Council approval of ordinance 2019-07, amending the City of Moab Municipal Code C1, Commercial Residential Zone, Section 17.20.020, use regulations in the addition of eating establishments excluding drive-in and drive-through services, and Moab Municipal Code Section 17.20.040E to read no building or structure shall exceed 30 feet in height. Summer?
Still this presentation.
I do have a question for the applicants.
Yeah, I would love to hear from the applicants
Guys,
now.
come
that
on.
we're
You
close
guys,
to-
when you guys come up here.
Bring some chairs. Just share the microphone.
Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Matt Hancock. So
Yeah,
I'm one of the,
Microphone.
please speak into the mic so it's on the
I'm
record.
Matt Hancock, so I'm one of the co-owners of the corner lots there on Mabita Drive, North Mabita Drive.
Okay.
I'm Scott Newton. I'm the owner of, I guess it'd be 675 North Main Street, which is currently being used as a parking lot for Old Mitchell Asphalt Company.
As an applicant, did you guys get your questions answered that you had issues with before?
Yes, they're all satisfactorily resolved.
Okay.
And we got to the point where our site plan was approved, but we're not intending to go forward with that site plan
Okay.
as part of this application.
All right.
We're simply asking for the zone to be amended to allow eating establishments, if that is to be included as part of any going forward. And the height limit increased to allow a second floor to allow for residential, currently precluded under 18 feet because it's not tall enough. We decided to go ahead with asking for a height limit of 30 feet to make it consistent with all the other zones in the city. As to whether 30 feet is appropriate for the zones in the city, we would consider that to be a broader question for the Planning Commission and the city to address. We were basically wanting the height restriction relaxed so we could put in commercial on the ground floor, residential, longer term residential on upper floors.
Okay.
Striking a balance between commercial and providing residential, which currently
We don't have anything at
we
all.
don't. And I think the best example, not saying that that's the type of business or even the style of the building, although I don't think it's a bad style of building, is the Peachtree model, where you have the restaurant on the ground floor or you have a business on the ground floor and then you have accommodation above floor. If the height restriction stays in its current form, then the likelihood is that it will simply be commercial on the ground floor with no capacity for residential on an upper floor.
Yeah, I think that answers. I'm not sure if this is so much a question for the applicants, but, well, maybe it is. What would be your, so it sounds like the ideal that the zone change would allow would be some sort of eating establishment on the first floor and then it dedicated residential on the second and third. Or just the second? Okay, yeah, I mean, it could
30
be three.
feet's 30 feet's going to be pushing it for 3 floors for a mixed use development,
if you have-
because typically for commercial on a ground floor you need a lot more than your 8-foot ceiling. So you need roughly your 12 feet by the time you're talking your slab, HVAC, sprinklers, joists for your second floor, and then your R49 for your roof. You're not going to have space for 3 floors.
You're not trying to get 3 floors, you're just trying to get a 2-story.
Exactly. 2-story with residential on commercial on a ground floor, but you're going to need more than 8 feet ceilings for a functional commercial building.
I understand that. Are you, this residential, is that also going to be able to be used for overnight?
No.
It's not
It just has to be residential?
C1, you're not allowed to have overnight.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, what I would like, I like the proposed ordinance as it stands now, and I don't, if you guys are done, we could, if you feel free to keep sitting there, I guess,
No,
but,
yeah, I'm good.
Thank you.
thank you.
We might call you back up, but
Yeah.
thank you.
What I would like to see, I guess I am comfortable, and I would venture that the public is comfortable with an increased height as long as the city is getting something for our number one problem, being housing. I think 30 feet in C1 is fine as long as there is a condition specifically written into the C1 code that says 30 feet if. 30 feet if it is, if anything above X number of feet is housing, is residential. And that sounds like that would certainly comply with what the applicant of the code change has in mind. And I'm of the mind that anytime we give something, we need to get something back for the city that's very concrete and clear, because if we just approve it as written right now, these applicants aside and their dedicated reasons for doing it, again, always looking at what can happen, not what will happen, there's nothing stopping a 2 or 3 story restaurant from going in. That's all commercial, something like that. Offices are great too, but because it's just this one small zone, I think it would make sense if the plan is residential on top of mixed use commercial, which we do desperately need more of, that really is code delineated residential when it's above a certain height.
Yeah, it could be not an if, but an and.
Yeah.
If you are going to build here, there must be housing.
Yeah. It can say structures above 18 feet shall contain residential units.
And that's, I think, going to mitigate the neighborhood's issues with this idea. The neighborhood's concerned that this is a buffer district, and this is, like taking away from the buffer district by having eating establishments there, open late, potentially people getting rowdy and bothering the neighborhood. But if there is actually housing there, and there's an incentive to put housing there, the eating establishments aren't going to get as rowdy because people will be living there.
I think so too. And we are, citywide things, again, limited space, having a housing crisis, things need to go up slightly before they go out to a place they can't go out if you're in the north part of the valley. I think it certainly complies with our general plan and our long use goals for the city as well. We want more commercial development that isn't overnight lodging. We need places for restaurateurs to rent or own. We need more office space. We need more shops. So I think if that change was made, I would approve it.
Yeah, I agree. And 30 feet really isn't very tall.
Yeah, at the end of, you can't, again, even the comment letter that we got brought up the fact that currently in the R zones, you can't have a 30-feet structure. The reality of that being that you don't.
You just look what we have here.
But
This is 12. Is this 12 or 14?
What's that? This is probably 12. And look at the ductwork.
Yeah.
So if he's going to hide that ductwork,
No, that's not 12.
Just a restaurant.
it's 11, I'll bet.
Yeah, for a restaurant.
So I'm 6.
Long-term,
8, 9, 10, 11. I bet that's 11
vision, all at once.
right there.
I would say that's 9.5.
How many donuts do you have?
I don't think that's it.
Well, it's almost twice as tall as you are.
Yeah. So,
We need a measuring tape. Anyhow, I'd like to readdress the Planning Commission again if I could. Marion, you mentioned "and" as a requirement. Could you please clarify what you mean by that?
Yeah, so any building being built in that area, since the area primarily is residential, with the exception of things like greenhouses and veterinary clinics and daycare facilities and all of that. So in order to maintain the residential character, we add housing as a requirement for a building. If you are going to build 30 feet, you need to have housing.
I would agree and support the proposal where above a single story, residential would be required. However, I would not be wanting to submit an application where if a building was to be developed over one story, at once, you couldn't develop on that lot at all unless you had residential.
Put housing, right, that's
'Cause
not
that's-
what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Exactly, because that's taking a step back from where we are now.
Being commercial is acceptable, being an eating establishment, great, but if you want to go up, having housing on top of that's your only option.
Are you happy with that?
I wouldn't be able to develop a commercial if I wasn't gonna have long-term housing on the top, so I'm limited still at 18 feet for commercial development. There's not really much you're gonna be able to develop it with commercial development at 18 feet, that's not very tall. I mean, and part of the issue is this is really some of the last commercial development lots that you have on North Main Street that can be developed.
How about 24?
24 for commercial?
Mm-hmm.
I would be fine with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That seems to track with some other buildings in town too. At least if I'm like our planning staff. I'm like, because the division in my mind is, I feel like 18, 24, 30.
Wendy's is, but like Wendy's also, it's a different zone obviously, but Wendy's is backing up to residential as well.
Yeah.
Which we probably would not do again if we had the choice. And if we rezone this, it could be Wendy's for 9 properties of Wendy's with no drive-through.
No, I was going to say.
We aren't rezoning.
We looked at rezoning it to C2, but we didn't want to go there because then we'd be opening ourselves up to, there would be probably a lot of people here for public comment, because then we'd be looking at overnight rentals, which we weren't wanting to go into.
Yeah, so if we did 30 feet, could you have 24 feet of commercial space with housing on top of it?
No.
6 feet?
No, see, that's only
But
6
what
feet.
he's saying is if he just goes one story, you want that 24 feet,
Yes.
which makes sense. That was a great idea she had, 24 feet.
But, 30 feet would be, it's tough because yes, if I could develop something and, maybe the commercial is 20 feet or 18 feet on the bottom. It's a tough, if I were doing only commercial, I need to be taller than 18 feet.
So wait, you're not putting housing on this property?
At this point, I'm not sure what I'm doing.
Yeah, he doesn't have to.
He doesn't have
I'm
to.
just trying to,
But if he does, then he wants the
Our
option.
other applicant, though, you said that 30 feet was 2 stories commercial on the ground floor.
You're not going to get 3 stories.
Correct.
With a mixed use
I guess I'm saying
commercial.
what you guys are saying seem to conflict a little bit.
we're separate lots.
We're
Yes,
separate lots, but no, I don't think it does
it's the
conflict.
idea of,
Yeah.
So can I clarify? At 30 feet, you feel like you could put commercial on the bottom, residential on the top?
Absolutely.
Okay, at 30 feet? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
so if we had 24, over
Commercial.
24, it must have residential on, however, we need to finagle that language a little bit, but
Now,
Buildings,
Summers, that,
buildings may go up to 30 feet if residential is the second story, the only use on the second story. So we can
I wanted
pass
to
it
comply with how it's written in other
changes.
portions of the code
We
if there
can
is.
recommend this with changes if we would like, but we have to be very crystal clear on what the changes should be.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to,
I think Mary Ann's comment was actually very clear that up to 30 feet if the second story is residential.
Yeah.
If it's a single story,
are we going to move to 24?
yeah, that would be another,
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Single story 24.
how do you guys feel about that modification? And they can send it to,
I'm happy,
they
yeah.
can send it to the city council with that recommendation.
correct,
I'm
it's
curious.
just a
I
recommendation.
know 18 feet for commercial is a struggle. having approached this before.
So single story, 24, two-story, up to 30, as long as it includes residential.
On the second floor.
No structure shall exceed 24 feet in height unless the second story is residential development, in which case the structure shall not exceed 30 feet in height.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, please, get up here.
Well, just say the two, I mean.
If you wouldn't mind speaking into the mic if possible, sorry.
Well, no, just that 24 feet could be also be 2 stories, but up to 30 feet, depending on, we just want the flexibility, because if you do 24 feet at just 1 story.
I think that's the proposal. Is
Right.
the 24 feet if it's single story
I get that,
commercial,
but
and then up to
what if you
30
wanted to do 2 stories at 24 feet?
We don't, there's nothing about stories in the code, it's just,
Okay, yeah,
it's just height. So if you can fit 2 stories of
got it. Okay.
whatever.
Trying not to tower over the neighboring community.
I think that can also be addressed with setbacks. I don't think any of us have any plans to build a straight-up wall. The building would be part of the brand of any business and building that was to go in that, and I'm a critic of some of the designs of some of the more blocky structures in town.
Yes, absolutely.
So if I'm gathering your suggestion correctly, Mary Ann, you're saying, and Kaya,
What I
up to
said.
24 feet, yes. Single story, up to 24 feet.
Or I would not put anything
Okay.
about story. I would just say
That was my point.
no building or
Gotcha.
structure shall exceed 24 feet in height unless, and then it shall not exceed 30 feet in height.
Scott, how tall is Poison Spider?
I wish I knew that right now.
I was gonna say, it doesn't matter to me, but my brain is that's how I think.
Yeah,
But I'm
reference is
thinking it's
good.
probably 24 feet. I don't think it's 30,
Poison Spidey, you think it's
because
30?
the
How tall is
upstairs
Poison
is a
Spider?
lot shorter.
I would say
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all of
yeah.
30 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say about 30.
How you get, because with the roof being slanted, where
You
you,
get-
actually, just because it might be taller at the top, you know,
Yeah.
the front.
It's from, there's a
Measure-
calculation, but I can't
Right.
tell you what
Yeah,
it is.
the idea is to go for like a wedding cake where the center of town is the tallest and everything else kind of gets smaller on the periphery. So, I mean, we do need to look at hotels. Hotels across the street right now are like 42 feet tall. So
That's a
it's
whole
not
nother issue.
consistent with across the street, but it is
This
pretty
building
close
is
to the community.
38, I believe 38
Yeah.
or 38
And
and a half.
government buildings get an exception to be a little bit taller.
That just gives you an idea.
Yeah, that's why I was just, because I was like,
The high school is right there about 30
Yeah,
feet.
the Hyatt place.
What's the residential height? 35, 30?
30 feet.
For what?
Residential is 30 feet.
Residential is 30 feet.
So 30 feet.
Yeah.
I think being that this is on highway frontage, it would be appropriate to allow office spaces for local businesses on the second story too. Not just residential.
Which is what we, in our previous development that we submitted to the city, that was our plan when we had another development that we were planning for the building. And we actually, with our architects, had a very hard time even trying to get an office up there. So that's why one of the reasons we had.
That was at the 18-foot height
Exactly,
limit.
yeah.
Yes.
But at the 24,
It's more feasible.
Oh, yes, absolutely, it would be feasible.
and that would accommodate, the 24 could potentially accommodate something on the ground floor, something,
An office on the second story if they do 24 feet.
right.
And I'm with you, I think that we need housing, so if we're gonna allow anything, it's got to be housing.
Yeah, and it seems like
Up to 30 if
24
we
feet
allow
being-
residential.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I do think that we need commercial space for local businesses too, not just hotels and restaurants and.
Yeah, if this were a different zone, if this were C2 or we were looking at one of the higher C zones, I think
Yeah, like
this just,
Northeast would make sense.
yeah, just being,
This being a buffer zone, we're
Yeah.
trying to create it to be slightly more residential and slightly more appropriate for this neighborhood.
That's why I was thinking office spaces might be nice because they generally function in business
Just
hours
during
and
the
be dark.
daytime.
Yeah,
no, I think
people to go.
it sounds like 24 feet could be feasible in order to allow that mix of commercial development. But if you are going to that threshold, which our public comment did express their main concern being 30 feet, it seems like that extra 6 feet being the kick up maybe for housing. It seems a workable compromise.
Having that.
And city council will still have to discuss this if we send this as our recommendation, and they might still get other feedback on it based on the discussion here tonight, so be prepared for that, but, yeah.
Would 24 feet fit within city specs for like 2 stories if you were doing commercial with all the requirements? Like, do you have to do fire sprinklers and all that kind of stuff?
That would be up to the building code and your architect to design that, but
Doable?
I would say it's doable. I mean, these guys have already come with a proposal to try to make it in 18 feet, and it did.
Real close.
But it was tight. It was tight, and so, I mean, this does still, I mean, it really is lower than any other height in any other zone, but it does allow for a little more flexibility to get office spaces, to get some restaurants, but also to potentially accommodate residential development above the ground floor. I think that's.
I like it.
So
Yeah,
if
me too.
everybody's okay with the 24 and 30, can we talk about what needs to be on the second floor? I think it should be residential, period, or housing, period.
Could we specify, rather than saying second floor, say above 24 feet?
Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
above 24 feet.
I have no building or structure shall exceed 24 feet in height unless residential development occurs. And then
Over
I didn't-
24
yes.
feet.
Build up to the 30.
Yeah.
So
Can
and
finagle
perhaps
that,
it
so
just
it,
says up to 30 feet if residential occurs above the ground floor.
yeah.
And so here's the question, Becky wants office space as well.
Well, I think if you can fit it within the 24 feet,
Yeah, it sounds
I think
like-
that's
within the
a good
24. Okay.
compromise.
That's where we're at.
And
That's
then
fine.
you get up to 30 if you can do housing.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, good.
Okay, any other discussion?
We're gonna need a motion that includes that
Oh,
information.
I got it.
I am so.
Oh, wait, what did we decide our end tag on that was, though, before I try to say it all at once? After,
We'll
after
just feed it to
unless,
you.
or
We'll
unless.
just feed
No
it to you.
building or
You get
structure
started.
shall exceed 24 feet in height unless.
Unless
Residential
any
development
area
occurs.
above 24 feet
Yeah,
is used for.
My statement is awkward.
No, and mine is too, but I would like to, can we flag, I just want that to match with similar language elsewhere in the code.
Okay.
And I don't have that in front of me
Okay.
to look through right now.
We can approve that next week's visit.
At this point, we'll
Yeah. I'll unwield
we'll create the motion and then we'll wordsmith it to, let's,
So we can
let's
go
work
ahead
with
and
it.
pass the motion if we are voted that way, even if the motion is not quite.
so I think you could say no building or structure shall
Yeah,
exceed
to
24
read.
feet in height.
Yeah.
No building or structure shall exceed 30 feet in height unless residential development occurs
No,
above the
should
ground
exceed
floor.
24 feet in height unless
Yeah.
residential development is above 24 feet.
Okay,
Maximum height of 30.
30, yes.
There it is.
All right. I motion to approve proposed ordinance 2019, an ordinance amending the City of Moab Municipal Code C1 Commercial Residential Zone, Section 1720-020, use regulations with the addition of eating establishments excluding drive-in and drive-through services, and Moab Municipal Code Section 1720-040E to read, no building or structure shall exceed 24 feet in height unless, I just did it wrong, unless
Residential.
any area above 24 feet in height includes residential development and
Not to exceed.
not to exceed 30 feet in height. To be cleared up by code Smith writers.
And do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you for
Okay.
Thank you,
the
guys.
back
you
and
very
forth. That
much.
was really helpful.
Good luck.
Okay, future agenda items. Summer, you want to add anything here before I make my little spiel? Really quick.
Yes.
Our next meeting is scheduled for March 14th. I will be out of town at a training. There are some transitions.
We're going rogue.
Yes, proud of you. I believe Joel and or David will be attending, but we do have a couple of public hearings scheduled for some zone change applications. So just be aware that that is coming to you. You've handled them before. I have faith that you will handle them completely well. But just to let you know, I will not be here at the next meeting. The following meeting, I'm not really sure what happens then either, because at that point I'm supposed to transition into my new position. So we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I motion to not allow Summer to leave the planning department.
I have sent Emily an email asking her about the idea of a planning commission wish list, and I have not received a reply back from her. So I think I'm going to have to set up a meeting with her to talk about this.
I know she was very sick last week.
She did, yeah, she was very sick.
What I'd like to do as a commission is put together a wish list of 10 or so items that I can take to Emily and or the council and say, would you like us to start developing or discussing or move on these things?
Absolutely.
So,
hotels, housing.
I do have an issue, though.
all right.
We've got a 6-month moratorium on development. And I have yet to see, and I'm sure you are involved in this, but as a planning commission, I haven't seen any plan of attack.
And that's why I'm hoping this wish list gets city council moving.
Because 6 months is nothing.
Right.
It's like a snap.
That's right.
And I have yet to see any forward moving.
Yeah, we
this.
spent 6 months on pad.
I can speak to that. We did have the consultant that is working on our future land use plan. They were at the last city council meeting. It looks like they are going to be the lead in working through
That was the
the
question I was
future
waiting
land
on.
use plan, as well as code changes that may come out of this future land use plan. It's my understanding from the city council that that may expand to be both city and county looking at that future land use plan and enacting ordinances for each jurisdiction based on that work. But the consultants seem to think that they could get things done in a relatively short amount of time.
And so we are really hoping for some direction.
I believe that they are planning on having some meetings, and I think they were going to have the planning commission chair from both city and the county and a couple of council members sit in on those groups. I don't know for sure if that's the plan. I haven't heard back from them, and I believe David's taking the lead on that.
Okay.
But I would expect that they will be talking with this group, trying to get some feedback on that.
Okay.
I'll say I would really like just for us to all be thinking about if and when something is coming across our desk and we are in sort of the workshop stage of any potential future land use plan or code changes that would come out of that, particularly during the moratorium period, that we be prepared and willing to have one long workshop at a time to be determined, rather than it's just not going to work for a discussion of that volume to try to split it up an hour before we have our regular meetings. Yeah. I think, if we have enough notice, the 6 of us can certainly figure out a time that we can all have that workshop without having to stop at 6.
And you're more than welcome. I mean, we can have workshops just for that stuff, and keep your other workshops available for other things. But you are going to be busy in the next 6 months.
Yeah, one giant planning, working with the consultant, working with city council, one giant
open houses
meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this commission is going to be busy.
How much notice do we need for a workshop?
For a workshop, I believe it's like, it's different than a public hearing. I believe that I have to have 24 hours for like an emergency meeting. 24 is or a little too short. I would say probably 2 days to,
Okay,
I mean,
so
you'd
we
want to
can-
give it enough time that you could at least advertise to get some attendance. It doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you're going to do kind of
Right.
an open house sort of thing, but if the commission wants to sit down and discuss what's coming before them, I mean, an emergency I can do 24 hours.
Okay, so before we get to the wish list, Wednesday evenings, how are Wednesday evenings for everybody?
Those are fine
Okay.
for me.
All right, so
Just anything after 5.
after 5. Okay, so just,
We'll just keep Wednesdays open for a bit.
Good idea. Thank
Sooner rather than later for me.
Yeah,
The next 3 months, great. The next 3 months after that, not great.
okay.
When it starts to get warm.
I'm out. Going camping.
Okay, so I have started my list, and my list includes any new commercial developments in the city in any zone not exceed more than 30 feet. That means basically 2-story hotels.
Yeah.
Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
Sure. I on my wish list, I would like to see no commercial developments over 30 feet in the city, period. I would also like to see overnight rentals of any type be no more than 50 rooms. So I would like to take us down from huge hotels to boutique hotels.
What form would you like to see that take? Would that be a code or zone by zone change or?
Blanket change. All overnight rentals.
That's an easy way to change the code.
Yeah.
So that's on my list, and I would like to take that to council or Emily and ask them if they are interested in looking at it.
And to be clear, you know, we all know this, but that does not include existing uses.
Right.
That would, anything
Right.
that's vested, that would not apply to.
Right.
But, yeah.
Maybe it would be good to include kind of what we just did on C1, where you could go up to the 3 stories if there's apartments.
Actually, yeah.
Mix it up.
Yeah. Okay.
I would like to see an expansion of more zones like C1. 5th West, 4th East.
Yeah, that whole C4 district is huge, and when that gets developed, we need to kind of have a plan for it. The whole like corridor coming into Moab on the left side, up against the, you know what I'm talking about?
That's
Like-
RC.
That's RC.
On the
There's
north
not
side?
very much C1.
Oh, it's county.
No, C4. It's
On the
Oh,
north,
C4.
on the north side, you have RC on one side and you have C4 on the other side.
Yeah, across the street.
But one thing to keep in mind too is that you do have those commercial zones, and is it appropriate to apply more of the C1, C2, C5 zones in between to kind of start creating that buffer? That's not typically how some of these were developed, especially like the C1 zone right next to an R2.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally you would have kind of your commercial zone, then, you know, your higher intensity commercial zone, then your buffer zone. And your buffer zone can include multifamily residential also. And I mean, that would work. And then you have kind of your less intense residential uses. I mean, ideally that's kind of the development pattern that you're looking for. Like Mary Ann said, you have this, and then you start tapering down as you go further out.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that being said, this is something that I know Marianne's brought up a lot too, that might fit well with that when we're looking at what kind of development we need to incentivize as offices and restaurants and shops. You know, if after the moratorium, if there are, you know, if there do continue to be overnight accommodations that are permitted for those to have a mixed use requirement, I think is totally not outside the realm of what is fair or even a good idea. I think it makes sense, especially if you're looking at the RC zone on the north side of town. The way you're going to get those areas being more vibrant and even desirable for the hotels that are up there is if there's reason for people to be there other than the hotel. Right. So having restaurants, having offices, having I mean, employee accommodations would be the perfect world, but
I know there were some ideas that were kicked around a few years ago, and it was, you know, maybe the ground floor should be limited to retail, office,
Right.
restaurant space.
Right.
And if you are going to have short-term rentals, that
happens above that ground floor space
Yeah.
to kind of get some different uses in on the ground floor, but.
That's a good idea.
We're concerned a lot about the character, preserving the character of downtown Moab right now, but I think if we can have that character extend to places where it currently isn't, you know, there's a reason, like, people don't wander up to Atomic Grill as much as they do for some of the restaurants and shops that are.
Well, and
closer.
ultimately, I mean, we have a lot of hotels downtown, and, you know, for someone that's visiting, they're not going to walk through the lobby of a hotel, but they would certainly walk through a store downtown, and, you know,
Yeah.
they may stay there. Yeah,
Like
I mean,
the
they may
Nuclear
stay there, but then they have the ability to kind of walk downtown and do some shopping, or, you know, visit the spa. There are some things that can be done to draw more retail and different types of uses in our downtown.
Yeah, it seems like the existing space-wise, really the only place to do that where it would make any sort of an impact would be the RC zone, given that's our sort of biggest potential for expansion, and it does specifically
Keep in mind redevelopment, though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Things could
say.
change.
Old buildings are gonna
Yeah.
start.
Yep,
coming down.
and some of those downtown buildings are old enough that you could probably see some
Yeah.
redevelopment of those areas, and
Yeah,
know,
like
does
right
that make
now,
sense?
we don't have anything protecting like in the center of Main Street. You could plow all of that down and build a Holiday Inn, all of it. So we need to like protect
for the
that in
next 5 months.
6 months. The next 5 months, we need to figure out how to protect that and how we want to see that happen.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the direction that council is really looking to take. And I think that they're hoping that the future land use plan will kind of give them some guidance to go in that direction, but they are going to want your input on that.
Yeah, that's the part where we need to get really comfortable with talking about character and facades and all of the fluffy stuff that's uncomfortable to legally write, but we got to do it. And maybe we work with the historic preservation people or the Grand County, the thing that my boyfriend is on.
You have a contact, is what you're saying?
I've got a contact.
We work with the Resford stuff. Yeah.
Anything else that you'd like me to try to take to Emily?
Do you have
at this point?
anything else?
Me? 50-room hotels and 30
Yeah.
feet. Yeah.
Sustainability, too. We've been touting that we're a sustainable town, but we've got to write that into the code. Less water, more sustainable practices. Like, there are entire cities in Europe now that are creating more energy than they're using.
I could pass that secret
The
on to
city of
Vegas.
Moab, I just found this out recently because I had to go through the state water board because I had to do some work. The city has more water than you guys could ever think about ever having. The city has more water than the county. The city has more water than just about anybody.
We're pretty fortunate.
I know. We're pretty full. And so.
And it's good water, too.
And it's really good water, and we've got to make sure that we protect that.
But not to abuse
county,
it. Not to abuse it.
The county and Grant County Water and Sewer, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next 5 years south of town also.
Oh, yes.
So we want to see
Absolutely.
that. Ooh, you guys,
Absolutely.
it's going to be spooky. So
Yep.
don't mean to give you nightmares, but
It's moving that direction, have you
it
noticed?
is moving that direction.
There's a new motel going right across from the one that's going up now. I know. Right across the street.
Which one?
It's a new one. It's going, you know where David Knutson, where the,
Yeah.
right there.
Is that going?
It made it under the wire. It's approved, so.
Well, it's really funny. All these developments, think about this, you guys. All the developments on Main Street, including Atomic and all this stuff, they're all undergrade. Do you guys always notice that they're all undergrade? I remember Phil
You mean
would
below
tell me-
grade? You mean below grade?
I'm below grade. All of them are.
Yeah,
And I
like
don't-
Archway Inn's roof basically comes
Archway,
to Main
everything
Street.
is below grade, and they say that you never want to buy that property because it
Yeah,
doesn't do
but there's
well.
something that is interesting about that. Everything slopes to the sloughs.
That's
So-
true.
So it doesn't matter. I mean, it's all going that direction. Typically, that would be a concern, but it's not. My concern would be a basement, like he was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like the water table would be really high
It's
right
very low. He hasn't seen it. He hasn't seen what happens when the river, remember how the river comes up to the hospital, the old hospital? Well, it comes up, that's the water table.
Uh-huh.
So that means the water table's actually coming up into basements.
Just to be clear, their property is located outside of special flood hazard area for the Colorado River, so it's not in a floodplain.
It's
Oh,
not-
well,
I was just
okay,
gonna say, that's my
okay,
house, and
Summer.
I'm not in a floodplain.
That
as far as I
doesn't
know.
mean it can't happen. I'm
Right.
just saying that it's not in a mapped special
No,
flood
no, I
hazard area.
understand.
I just
I
don't want there to
understand,
be.
But it can get up close.
Get up real close.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just, it's gonna be really interesting, so yeah.
Which is why protecting and preserving our wetland is very important, because that is.
It really
the
is, yeah.
Our buffer.
brain.
That is your buffer.
That's your buffer.
Okay,
I'd like to
anything?
see something that's more clear about everything on Main Street facing Main Street, because then we're gonna have all these wonky buildings that can like face off of Main Street. So like most cities say your entrance needs to be facing Main Street. And it has to be like, when you go down Main Street, all the fronts of the buildings are up to Main Street. And
There's actually a section in our code right now that says, especially for the C3, not necessarily for any other zone, but it does say that if you have your building pulled to the front line, then you are not required to do the landscaping strip. So it's kind of a trade-off. If you pull it to the front line, then you don't have to do the 15-foot wide landscape strip. But if you don't, then you have to put that 15-foot wide landscape strip in. But it's, you know,
yeah, and
Is that
how
all
far
commercial
I don't
zones?
like that.
that's
at
in the C3.
all.
How far out are we gonna decide to develop that? Like, do we want the entire 5 miles to be walkable, like street front, you know, and Main Street to be going super slow? That's something that we have to decide, like those setbacks for the entrances.
And
On
I
C3?
mean, ultimately, I think you're talking
On C3?
design standards.
All of Main Street. Everything, like all the new stuff that we're putting in, like, is that an appropriate distance from the sidewalk? Because if that's gonna be a bike path in the future and a walking path, it would be a little bit more appropriate to have the building closer to the street.
It's really interesting.
Anything else for the list right now?
Well, I would like to add to it at some point, maybe not today, but probably some things we could think about.
Not moving the post office.
Well,
Can't.
I will just say that
You know what? You're gonna see it
government
move.
can purchase property and do what they want with it, and
Yes.
we don't get a say.
yes, we do. We actually can influence that. I'll bet you down the road that will be gone. And the reason why is because it's too much. Don't you agree?
If they wait any longer, it'll be our historic post office.
Yeah.
No, they tried to get a new post office.
They've looked at
They've tried to
moving.
get a new post office and it didn't work.
They're just
It will happen. We're getting to that point.
The thing about it is, though, you do want to keep in mind that you kind of want your civic services close to your downtown. I mean, you really want access to, you know, the city, the county, the post office. You want those to be within a walking distance. You don't want to start pushing those out to the outlying areas, because then you're actually encouraging more driving. I mean, the idea is that you have a walkable area to receive those services.
But the center of town is changing. The center of town is going to be 2 miles that way. You watch and see. It's happening.
Brian, my office is 2 blocks from the post office.
I know
And
it.
for me to
I
make
know.
my filing deadlines, it is very
It's
important.
changing. We don't
Post
have
office
much.
is 2 blocks from my
As
office.
soon as you see these big box stores moving in or something like that, the center of town starts to move.
I have to say that in where, you know, where I grew up and not particularly high school, but as I got older and you lived in a suburban situation, that was urban sprawl, and the post office was not downtown, and you had to find it. It was hidden. I mean, I could never find the post office ever. And I lived in a really like cool, you know, hip part of town, but it was way off in La La Land.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say the purpose of this downtown plan is really to actually create that downtown so that it stays where it's at and it doesn't move 2 miles south. You want to actually create that sense of space in your downtown area so that, yes, you're going to have development that occurs south of town, but that's the whole purpose of this downtown plan, is to kind of create that area.
I understand. It's just so congested.
Oh, it is.
It's just a mess.
Yeah.
And so if you want to resolve the problem of the mess, we have to change something.
Hasn't it been proposed to move the liquor store further south of town?
I've heard grumblings.
Yeah.
That'd be a
of
good
that.
spot for the post office.
Yeah,
That would be awesome.
maybe.
The post office and the liquor store next door to
Okay,
each other.
so
It's
Still,
still
I
2
mean,
blocks
move the
from my
liquor
office,
store.
so.
since the post office is federal, we
Well,
cannot have it. I'm trying to close the meeting, folks.
Let's do it.
Way more horse parking on Main Street?
Yes.
Main Street horse parking?
Yeah. Horse parking?
On Main Street?
We've tried
I don't know
that.
what planning
The
We
commission.
should bring that back.
The hitchin
Tried it.
post.
The hitching
Back
post.
in
Yeah.
the day, the hitchin post,
Yeah.
the bar,
had
which is the
another
Rio,
Right,
had
Right.
horse parking
yes, they did,
back in the day. I
yes.
just
wait,
remember
before you-
hearing about it. I didn't
There was-
actually see
And
it.
there was somebody that tried to park his horse in the parking lot outside of the hardware store, and
Couple
got,
years ago.
yeah, a couple of years ago, got ran off.
Walker or Turner?
Yeah,
hit?
Walker.
Isn't that
No, and he
Billy?
got ran off 2 or 3 times before he
Oh.
finally decided that was probably not the best corral.
Can we not take
Who,
horses on
who
Main
was
Street
that guy?
anymore?
What was
There-
his name?
You have to have a parade permit.
Yep.
What was
Okay.
the guy?
No.
What was the guy's name that used
Okay.
to bring his horses? Anyway.
Anyway,
Something
yes.
for the list. I don't know if this is a planning commission thing. It's probably a city council thing or a private enterprise thing. But man, if there was ever a town where it would be appropriate to have city bikes or something like that.
We've
yeah.
tried that in the past, and it fell flat.
I mean, well, maybe it
Maybe
fell flat for
now.
different reasons in the
There's
past.
so many models now. If a private
Yeah.
person wanted to pick up one, it's like you make like an extra $1,000 a month.
But for the city to potentially permit locations on city property where those could be parked, just something to think about. Because we're gonna get scooters before we get bikes at this rate if we don't, so.
Park City has
And they're so
the
fun.
e-bikes,
They're
so-
so dangerous. As an attorney, they're like, you look at it and you're like, this is a terrible idea, but they're fun.
It's kind of like an orthopedic surgeon. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that trampoline, but
Yeah,
it's really
it's
fun.
exactly.
But yeah,
Anything else?
I just don't see a biking. This, I mean, you can tout biking in Moab downtown, but this is not. The downtown is not bike friendly.
I would,
yeah, I don't
well,
think the main
not,
until
I
the
would say some
bypass.
the times are changing though, and I think
Yeah.
with the downtown plan, that
hope
may, that may change.
Maybe not the Main Street corridor right now, but just off of Main
Yep.
Street in either way.
But
it's
I
really
have to
good.
say, just getting signage to go off of Main Street has been a struggle, and it's crazy because it's just signs. It's crazy. It's like you want to make a
Downtown
good
plan.
change, and people are like, "Rah!" and you're like, I just want some signage to get off
One
of
thing
Main Street.
we didn't talk about was just having a bus, just a community transit for all the old people and people that don't have vehicles that live too far to walk. Just one short bus that maybe does a figure 8 around Moab and Spanish Valley and drops people off at the post office.
No, it's totally
We're back to
legit.
the
It's totally legit. It's totally
No, it
legit.
is. I was just laughing at the post office being the linchpin of that plan.
Okay, it's on the list.
All right.
Then they'll get post office and coffee, but then you get one less car.
I'm Joe, I'm putting on my hat.
Are you adjourning?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there anything else that needs to be discussed for the good of the commission? Okay, then the meeting is closed at 7:06 PM.